Probably in different levels, we all have heroes. Sometimes somebody will strike you and it's a military hero. Or it may not be military. Sometimes a person will strike you will be maybe an entertainment icon or a sporting athlete. You say, oh boy, I wish I could be that person. Or it might be in other realms. It might be in a realm where you look at them and they're medical heroes. Maybe they were mentors. Maybe they were your parents. Maybe they were your peers that inspired you. Maybe it's your siblings. So you have these different individuals. You say, boy, if I could just be like them. And that does have merit along that line. The flip side is, whoever the them is, there was also individual areas where they were challenged. And they had their own shortcomings. In the Bible, when we look at Abraham, we say, wow, what a hero in the faith. And Genesis 15 and verse 5, and it said, and God took him outside, and that was Oaks of Mamre, just above Hebron in south central Palestine. And God says, look toward the heavens and count the stars, if you're able to count them. And he said to him, so shall your descendants be. You say, well, for somebody who doesn't have any children at all, is about 80 years old and said, man, you're going to start a family. And say, whoa, I think we're past that. But what we find out is Abraham's attitude. Paul comments on this in Romans 4 and verse 3, that Abraham believed God. And it, that is his faith in God, was reckoned as righteousness. So here's all his failings and reversals and things. He could have, should have, would have had done better, but it didn't work out that way. And God is saying, if you believe in me, I'm going to wipe that all away. You know, that's 70 times 7, and you got a clear slate. Interestingly, that passage in Romans 4:3 that we just cited is also in Genesis 15 and verses 5 through 8, in Galatians 3 and in verse 6, and James 2:23. It is a monumental statement that was a cornerstone, a turning point, where God said, that's what I'm asking from you. Paul, that's what I'm asking from you. In Romans 4:16, he said, and the blessing is by faith, that the promise may be certain to all who are of the faith of Abraham. Are you of the faith of Abraham? It is said that there are 3 world religions that look to Abraham as being an icon of their origin. Certainly Christians do. But before that, the Jews did. Interestingly, 600 years after Christ, the Muslims say, yeah, we believe in Abraham as a prophet back in that era. But isn't that interesting? Paul is saying, you've got the same faith that Abraham does. Yeah. Well, I have faith, but I don't think mine matches up to Abraham's. Well, we're going to take a look at that. Do you have faith like Abraham? And the answer is yes. You say, oh, now, but I'm not like that. Everybody looks at somebody else and say, oh, man, they are so far above me. Well, that's true. If you look at the person ahead of you, they do have the stature, experience, or this or that, and there's just as many people, maybe more behind you, that have less. We're all in that mix somewhere. And I just think, like, if you're making bread or baking a cake, you know, you have the eggs and the sugar and the butter and the flour. It's all in there, and it all has its part. And so what Paul is talking about is that believers have that same faith that Abraham had. And it's hard for us to get our minds adjusted to that. Well, what happened in Abraham's call? We find in Acts chapter 7 and in verse 2 that here as Stephen is talking, he says, the God of glory appeared to our father, that is ancestor Abraham, when he was in Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. You got the big Tigris on the north and Euphrates south, just below that. And before he lived in Haran. So when he's back there in his Middle Eastern town, he said, here's what happened, is that God called him. Think about that attitude in Nehemiah 9:7. It said, thou art the Lord God who chose Abraham and brought him from Ur of the Chaldees. Paul says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 down about verse 14, we were called through the gospel. I'm not talking about geographically, but we are all someplace different than we are now. That we were maybe raised in a fine Christian family, or others, oh man, was a disaster, or dysfunctional, or in between, or pretty good, or not so good. Everybody was called from someplace different. God says, I want you. He said, oh, hey, I don't think you want me, God. I don't have what that person has. God says, you have what you have, and I want you. I want you to be part of the family. And that's what he did for Abraham. And so in Genesis 11, down verse 31, and Terah, Abraham's dad, took Abram his son, and Lot, that is, the son of his son, so it makes it Terah's grandson. And Terah took Sarai, his daughter-in-law, that is Abraham's wife. And they went out together from Ur the Chaldees in order to enter into the land of Canaan, and they went as far as Haran. This is not exactly, but they got halfway there and stopped. And the patriarch of the family said, okay, we're here. Where? Where it is, and we're halfway there, and I think it's all good. And so they all hang out there, I'll say, for 5 years, and Abraham's brother dies, Haran. But think about this. We're not talking about after he got into Palestine and God said, look at the skies. When he's just taken out of Ur the Chaldees, and it's just estimated, he's 70 years old. So figure this. At 70, are you ready for a new life? He said, yeah, 70. I thought that's when you get in a rocking chair and start. Oh, no, that's when it begins. I mean, it gives us a new way of thinking. It's not like life is over and I think I'll just flop over on the front porch like Rover. I mean, it's just starting. Where's that new birth? The goals to set and objectives to reach. Abraham was 70 or thereabouts. Is it okay? Start a gun, boom, go. Wow. And so I just enjoy working out, but I work out with individuals that are so unbelievably above me. I mean, I'll not be them. I don't have to be them. I just got to be me. Get off the sofa and do something. And so are you ready to take the next step? I don't care if you're 7, 17, or 75. So what did he leave behind? Now, Ur, Ur, back there in Sumar, and yeah. Well, they had their own temples they called ziggurats, and he's leaving those. And he's leaving this whole polytheism, multi-gods, or this one's killing that one and cutting the other one up and whatnot. And he's leaving all that behind. And one author said they dripped in wealth. You think of where the Middle East now, where the oil is, man, money, they got it. It's coming out their ears. And they abounded in astrologers. They had priests that ruled, merchants that cheated, artisans, some of the greatest in the Mideast. The home of the writing of cuneiform. One of the early, the little kind of triangular thing. How in the world can he make anything out of that? He said, I'm leaving it all behind. And I try to think of some place that I've never been. And Paul, how'd you like to go there? You know, if you go down through Central America and past Guatemala, man, you can get to Guyana. Paul, is that where you want to go? No, I don't want to go to Guyana. Somebody said Darrell Bede wants to go to Uganda. Paul, do you want to go to Uganda? I don't want to go to Uganda any more than I want to go to Guatemala or Guyana. God said, Abraham, I've got a mission for you. You're going to leave all of this behind, and you're going to someplace new. Are you ready to leave your past behind and move forward? See, because the reality is we get stuck sometimes, and here's where Abraham was. And there's just a kind of a graphic of the city that, here's the great Euphrates. Beautiful wealth has all of this. A city from 3,500 years before Christ. Wow. We talk about, man, we've been a nation 200 years. That's nothing. What a marvelous place there was. Abraham said, I'm leaving it all. I'm leaving that. You're leaving that? I'm leaving it behind. So his journey took him from Ur up through Babylon, because this would have been the trade route, up there to Haran, and that's where, I'll say, the patriarch of the clan stops, and that's where Abraham stops for maybe 5 years. And then in Genesis 12 and verse 1, God says, go forth from your country and from your relatives. Now, you left Ur behind, but you hadn't left the family behind. Yeah, we just took them all with us. He said, yeah, it's time to move on. Move on from your father's house to the land that I will show you. And he gives them some promises. Genesis 12:2, and I'll make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I'll make your name great, and so you will be a blessing. And I thought about that. Usually, well, yeah, great, here's the nation promise. Well, that's amazing. But it's more than that. It's Abraham, you have a place in the call of God. You are going to be great. I was doing some research on this idea of how much impact do you have on people. Most of us say, not much. I mean, I'm just me hanging out, getting groceries, putting gas in the car. Study after study says, and this is just an estimate, that you meet, you don't have impact on everybody you meet, but in a lifetime, you will meet about 80,000 people. Now, you can go to sports arena and they're all there, but you don't meet all those people. But you meet, I was just thinking yesterday, well, here's a pharmacist, a Costco pharmacist. I met a lady I had never met before, and well, the one that, I'll say, took my money, said this, and go over, and then you got to talk to her. Have you had that medicine before? I don't know. And I thought, this is a new lady. Oh, okay. And then I went into Sportsman Warehouse. I had to get a salmon punch card, and I met somebody different. And you have all kinds of people that you meet, but some is more impactful for others. And I said, in a lifetime, and so I just chose some amount. If 0.04 times 80,000, that is 4% of everybody that you ever meet, if you have some notable impact on them, that is 3,200 people you impact. Good or bad, but you leave a mark with them. You get them to think about something new. You don't have to change their whole life, to being a sports hero, but you change it for the better. And I think about person after person that had an impact on my life. I think about people that had an impact on my life before I became a Christian, and it was not good. After I became a Christian, person after person that made a difference, that set my sights higher, that I could look to as an example. I became a better person. I like that. I would like to do what they do in those right areas. And that's what the Apostle Paul said, right? That what I want you to do is I've set an example for you. And so you set the example for others. And then as you think beyond that, promise number 2 was in verse 3, I'll bless those who bless you, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. There's going to be a ripple effect. It's going to have an impact. So think about if in your lifetime you meet 80,000 people, and of that 80,000 people you have some positive impact on 3,200. And of those 3,200 that you had an impact, let's just say half of them, replicate that to somebody else in their lifetime. The good in one generation to the next has multiplied to to 5,120,000. And we never think about that because, look, I'm just me doing my best I can, going on my job. But think about all the different areas in which you do have impact. You have impact on your family. You might impact your relatives, maybe your coworker, individual in the sports team, in the academic world, in the corporate world. All these areas that you set an example and somebody said, I like that. Sometimes just they're a small thing that you appreciate. Years and years ago, I had the opportunity of sharing the gospel with Jim Myers. He can tell you exactly how many years ago. I don't know, 38 years or 40 or something back there. And I remember we were driving down past Renton as though you're going out to Maple Valley and the traffic was a mess and people cutting in and out. And boy, he said, boy, you're trying to confront me, you know. Jim said, he just relaxed. He said, they must want that spot more than I do. And I went, that's a good attitude. Maybe I'll just adapt myself and adopt a little better attitude of, I'm going to fight for my 11 feet of space. Hey, you got to the light 1 second ahead of me. And the reality is, it doesn't matter. And so I want you to think about, Abraham made an impact, but so do you. The faith like Abraham. And so in Genesis 12 and verse 4, Abraham went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Now Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. He said, oh man, I thought life was over at 40. He said, man, 75, we're just warming up. I mean, we're just finally got past our past and we're moving on to the next goal. So here's and there's up to Haran, and then you come on down the line into Palestine. And so finally end up about Shechem. In Genesis 12, 6 and 7, here at Shechem, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendants will I give this land. Now here's number 3. It's the land promise. Just follow me. Just do what I ask you to do, and you're going to be a blessing. Your descendants will be a blessing. You're going to inherit the land. Genesis 12:10, now there was a famine in the land. You say, wow, Abraham was amazing. I want to be like Abraham. I like it. He was rich. I'd like to switch places. Well, maybe not. There was a famine in the land, so Abraham went down to Egypt to sojourn or live there. In verse 11, and it came to pass, when he came near to Egypt, he said to Sarai, his wife, all you women will appreciate the statement of faith. See now, I know that you are a beautiful woman. Women like to be praised. And please say that you're my sister, so that it may be well with me because of you, that I may live on account of you. So, everywhere we go, somebody says, hey, are you married to? Oh, no, that's my sister. Women, you'd like to be introduced to friends, and instead of Mrs. So-and-so, yeah, that's my sister's Mildred or whatever it is. And so, wow, what happened to the faith of Abraham? Well, I trust God, but you're going to have to only tell half-truths from now on. Well, then you got Lot, and we're coming into the land of Palestine, and so what happens here? He journeys from the Negev as far as Bethel, so he's headed north now. Genesis 13:7, and there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot. So we got now internal conflict in the extended family. And your servants and their servants. And so what do? Well, you try to solve problems. Abraham said, let there be no strife between you and I, for we're brothers. I mean, not, siblings, but, man, we're relatives. So here's what we're going to do. You choose wherever you want to go, and I'll go the other direction. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the valley of the Jordan, that was well watered everywhere. And so Lot chose for himself the valley of the Jordan. Man, beautiful. And settled in the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as, you guessed it, Sodom. Oh, man, that's not a good choice. Yeah, but, man, we got city life and we got plenty of pasture land for the animals. Well, that's true. but your choices are leading you in the wrong direction. But think about this. Would you sacrifice anything for peace, or just a lot of things for peace and harmony? You say, well, I'd sacrifice a lot, but not everything. I wouldn't sacrifice truth. You don't want to sacrifice honor. But you try to have humility with wisdom. And so when the Lord struck Sodom and Gomorrah, look at Genesis 19, but his wife from behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. I'd always thought about it like, shaboom! I mean, and we don't really know. One commentator, Jamieson, Fawcett, and Brown, says she was suffocated and then overwhelmed by the torrent of bituminous and sulfurous matter. I thought, well, that's possible. Doesn't matter one way or the other. But her body was encased over a period of time, or immediately if you see it that way, and rendered her a lasting monument to the fatal effects of too great a focus on worldly attractions. I'm looking in the wrong area. Paul, where do you want to go? Yeah, but your past and this and that. Past is past. I can't relive it. You can't unring a bell. You can't unspill milk. All you can do is learn from it and move forward in whatever it had to be. So, am I spending too much time looking back at past failures? Oh man, what I did back there. That's almost as debilitating as, well, let me tell you how good I was in 1951. Good, who cares? What about 2021 and 2022? What about next year? We're crowded in on 2023. And so I can't just be looking back. We talked about, we're driving to church this morning. The inside of her car windshield, it gets fogged up and whatever stuff. And we keep saying, we need to wash the inside of that thing, because when the sun shines on it, you see all the fuzzy stuff. And she said, we need to choose a new route to come to church. That is, so the sunshine doesn't shine on the windshield. I said, look, I got a better plan. Tom Cruise in some of these action-adventure things, he gets in the car, he looks in the rearview mirror, and he drives backwards. Wouldn't that work out good? That's not going to work out very well, Paul. Hey, eye in the sky sees, here's this car driving backwards, going northbound on I-5, and blah, blah. And so, that is a plan, but that's not a good plan to be looking backwards. Well, here was Lot's wife. And so, are we locked in the past or focused on the future? Past is past, can't change it. But I can move forward and make a new beginning. Genesis 15:1, God's vision promise. He said, do not fear, Abraham, I'm a shield to you. Your reward will be very great. Abraham said, look, man, I'm now 85 years old. I'm going to be a great nation. I got nobody at 85. I'm childless. And he took him outside, and here's the background to it. He said, look toward the heavens and count the stars if you are able. And he said to him, so shall your descendants be. Millions, billions. Wow. And then he believed in the Lord, and it was reckoned to him for righteousness. We're just trusting God. God, whatever you say, it'll be well, and I'm going to trust you. Just a couple more thoughts, because Abraham is 85 years old, no children. And he said, up in my own words, says, you say have billions? I'll buy into it. What next? So Christian, man, you 70, 75, you're just warming up. You said, I'm wore out. Said, oh, no, man. We just get them boilers going and get up a full head of steam. And so he made some other choices. In 16:1, Sarai, his wife, had borne him no children. And she had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. So what did they do? She said, I got no babies, so hey, I'll tell you what, why don't you marry Hagar as kind of a secondary wife, and then whatever kid she has, will count as mine. Yeah, well, what a plan that is. They lived in Canaan for 10 years, had no kids. She gives her maid Hagar to Abraham as a secondary wife, except that, although it was Sarah's idea, it doesn't go well because of jealousy and lack of respect and all this and that. And so what happens there? Well, now you've got more problems. Abraham listens to his wife, takes her advice, and the maid despises Sarah, and it's Abraham's fault. So there you go. Wait a minute, I thought it was all going to work out well. It's going to be fine. It's not fine. Well, Sarah, you're the one that suggested, yeah, but you still didn't make it work out right. Well, was that a good plan? No, it really wasn't the greatest plan in the world. And so I like to talk about sometime how Abraham's faith met the law of unintended consequences. You didn't think I'm going to turn out that way. What if you thought about what could go wrong if you go that way? You say, well, it sounds like a good idea at the moment. That's right. But some of those things do not hold up well. So it was just inconsistent. He was up, he was down, good choices, bad choices, telling half-truths, totally faithful, trust God. Then what happens? Genesis 20, verse 1. He traveled to the Negev, settled in the city of Gerar. Abraham told the people that Sarah was his sister again. And when King Abimelech heard this, Abimelech wanted Sarah, so he sent some of his servants to take her. And one night God spoke to Abimelech and said, you will die. For that woman you took is married. And he says, wait a minute, I've not slept with her. I'm not guilty. And so, Abraham, why'd you do such a thing? Abraham thought, no one in this place respects God. I thought someone will kill me to get Sarah, and she is my wife, but she's also my sister. God led me away from my father's house, and I told Sarah, do something for me. Wherever we go, you tell people you're my sister. Oh, please, are you telling me? Well, she was kind of half-sister, but that's the other half of the truth you're not telling. You happen to be married to this lady. And so what about that? The faith of Abraham meets the providence of God. Abraham, you weren't totally consistent. And then as we wrap up in Genesis 22:2, he says, take your son, your only son, whom you love. It's not doing, man, trying to get rid of this kid anyhow. We might as well sacrifice him while we got the chance. Your only son whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering on the mountains of which I'll tell you. It took 3 days to get there. Isaac said, well, we got the fire and we got the wood. Where's the sacrifice? How do you tell the son? You're it. Oh, man. But Abraham's been churning with that. He said, God will provide the sacrifice. Then he has to tie his son up. Dad, what are you doing? Then he takes a knife to slay his son, and the angel stops him, verse 11 and 12 of Genesis 22. As you look at that, what was Abraham thinking? Hebrews 11:19 says, he considered that God was able to raise him up. And that's what you do, God. Oh, man, I can't wrap my mind around that. The faith of an imperfect Abraham. Wow. But the reality is, folks, isn't that all of us? We don't do things exactly right. We're just pointed in the right direction. And so, would you do anything that God asks? In Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2, offer your bodies a living and holy sacrifice. That's what he asks of us. Say, God, I do believe in you, and I know you love me, and I'm not flawless, but I'll do the best I can, and I offer myself up to you. That's what the whole idea is of becoming a Christian. Father, I give you what little I have and that I am, for you to make the best that you can. We're going to be singing this song, number 267, said, I believe in Jesus. If you'd like us to pray for you, if we can help you in any way, if you'd like to be baptized into Christ, whatever we can do, won't you let us know as we stand and sing this invitation song.